my class. It's like magic. Welcome, everybody. My name is, I wish I were a little taller so people in the back can see me. Actually, I wish I were a little taller for a lot of reasons, including so that people in the back can see me. My name is Ed Iacobucci. I'm the dean here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. First, I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this celebration of the IHRP and its 30th anniversary. It truly is a celebration. The IHRP is one of the most prominent, I think, aspects of our program and our focus on international law and policy. And I'm so proud of the impact that it continues to have on both our students and on the international human rights movement. Through its incredible summer fellowship program and clinical legal education program, the IHRP helps train the next generation of globally focused lawyers to the highest standards of excellence, advocacy, and professionalism. This summer, 16 of our students participated in our fellowship program and worked in different corners of the world for a range of organizations, including the ICC, UNHCR, and Human Rights Watch. The clinic continues to break ground. In recent years, the clinic has brought important international human rights laws perspectives to cases before the Supreme Court of Canada, assisted Canadians seeking remedies before the UN Human Rights Committee, and authored groundbreaking reports that expose human rights abuses both within and outside the country. Our IHRP alumni, many of whom are here tonight, it's great to see such a full room, have gone on to a wide range of exciting and meaningful careers, both domestically and abroad. You're a testament, I think, to the strength of the program and the quality of the students that it attracts. I will shortly pass the mic to the IHRP's wonderful leader, Samer Muscati, who is, with his predecessors, a couple of whom at least are here tonight, such an important reason why the IHRP is the success that it is. And I want to thank you, Samer, and Renu and Noah for all that you've done. But before I hand over the mic, I also want to thank Rebecca Cook and Bernard Dickens. They're not only leaders in lending their considerable expertise to the IHRP, but to the human rights enterprise. But they've also generously offered financial support to this program, pledging to make a certain amount available to match donations. So your gifts, this is the Dean's rule, so that your gifts could have a double impact on the program. The faculty is incredibly proud of the impact Rebecca and Bernard have had on international human rights, on this faculty, on this country, indeed in the world. They're incredible globetrotters who have spread not only their wisdom and knowledge near and far, but are incredible connectors who have contributed, I think, in important ways to making the world feel that much smaller. So thank you to you both. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome IHRP Director Samer Muscati, who will say a few words. Thank you again for joining us this evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to be celebrating our 30th anniversary with all of you tonight. I've been the director here for almost 2 years, and it's really been a privilege to be working so closely with some of the law school's most thoughtful students, faculty, and staff, our inspiring alumni, and a host of partner organizations in Canada and abroad. Thank you all for your tremendous contributions over the past 30 years. It's really amazing to see so many of our supporters in this room, including our former directors, Carmen Chung, Valerie Oosterveld, and Noah Novogrodsky, who were instrumental in the IHRP's development. Personally, I owe Noah a huge debt. If it wasn't for Noah, I never would have had my first international experience working for the Special Tribunal in Timor-Leste, and almost dying after contracting dengue fever while I was there. So thanks, Noah, I think.
You're welcome, I think.
A special thank you to Professor Audrey Macklin, who, through her leadership and assistance, is helping the IHRP in every way possible, and to Hannah Gross, who has done the IHRP proud of their work for us on immigration detention. I also wanted to thank the Honorable William C. Graham, our advisory board member, whose recent financial contribution to the IHRP will allow us to hire 3 researchers over the course of the next 3 years, the first of whom is our wonderful alumni, Petra Molnar. Turning to tonight's event, I want to thank all the people who were instrumental in making it happen. I'm really grateful to our friends at Human Rights Watch Canada for allowing us to exploit their tireless and dedicated representatives Elizabeth Levitt and Alison Thornton, along with the IHRP's Karen Harrington, as well as our other wonderful volunteers tonight, Danielle, Lucia, Terry, and our photographer, Jorge. Thanks also for our alumni steering committee, Morgan Sim, Louis Century, Sarah Armstrong, Caitlin Sainsbury, Sarah Wright, and Sophia Jazz for their help in organizing and promoting this event and finding us sponsors. I'm also incredibly grateful for Professor Rebecca Cook, who founded the IHRP in 1987 and has been one of the program's greatest supporters over the years. Her support continues today, as Dean Iacobucci mentioned. Professor Cook and Professor Dickens will be matching all financial contributions that are received tonight. Thank you so much for your generosity. Also, a big thank you to our generous event donors, the law firms Baskins, Stackmans, Oslers, and Goldblatt, and a big thank you to Ari Laskin and Tories, who have sent a dozen lawyers here tonight and who have been wonderful supporters of our clinic work over the past couple of years. And lastly, I wanted to thank and introduce you to my friend Renu Mandhane, who is the IHRP in human form. She even shares the same birthday with the IHRP, and rather than celebrate with her family, she is here tonight supporting us. Thank you, Renu. I personally think the best birthday gift that you can possibly give Renu is donating to the cause. Our volunteers are spread throughout the room with donation cards. As well, there are cards on the radiators and at the registration table. Apparently, there's no escaping them. So, and just last month, Canadian Lawyer named Renu one of the top 25 most influential lawyers of 2017. The write-up was on point. It said, Renu Mandhane has reinvigorated the OHRC. As the Chief Commissioner, she has been a vocal, courageous, and ardent advocate on issues of racial profiling, carding, police oversight, Indigenous rights, and the rights of people who are differently abled. Her calls for change are also largely what blew open the story of Adam Cape, the young Indigenous man who has been in indefinite solitary confinement with the lights on 24/7 for more than 4 years. Renu also makes time to continue supporting the students she taught at the University of Toronto as director of the IHRP, and is not afraid to engage with opposing viewpoints both in person and on Twitter. Renu, your work are inspiring to all of us, and I'm so grateful that you're here tonight. Let me end with a birthday toast of gratitude to you. Happy birthday, Renu.
Happy birthday. Okay, so Dean Iacobucci wanted to grow a couple of First thing I learned, how to lower a mic. So thank you everyone for being here today, and it really is a true honor to see all of you and to celebrate the anniversary of the International Human Rights Program. And I'd really like to thank Dean Iacobucci for starting us off in the right way by acknowledging that we are on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit. I'd also like to thank Samar Muscati, who I tried to get over to the IHRP for my mat leaves unsuccessfully, but I was ultimately successful, so I'm very, very happy that he's here. So the first thing we're going to do is like a 7th inning stretch. We're all going to take 2 steps forward. Yes? Come on, are you with me? Good. Okay, great. So it's funny, I wrote a speech to deliver tonight, and then I saw who was coming, and I was like, I can't deliver this like really, say all the things the Dean and Samar said. I'm going to just regale you with anecdotes about people who are actually, lots of them are in the room, about my time at the IHRP and how meaningful it has been for me. And I hope that you take from it what I did, which is realizing that the IHRP is truly unique in terms of its pedagogy, the capacity building that it offers to its partners, and the impact that it has on everyone who goes through it, not just students, but the directors as well. So in terms of pedagogy, I think what makes the IHRP really unique is that it bridges academia and private practice in a really unique way, where people start to learn not only from the director, but from each other and from their partners. I remember one anecdote to that effect was I had this student in my class, and she had a PhD from Cambridge, and I was like, oh my God, she's like more qualified than I am. And I was sort of, she brought a really great perspective to the class discussions. And when it came time to work on projects, she really wanted to, not do legal research, but she wanted to do sort of the factual side of the case. So she wanted to help draft an affidavit that would be filed before the UN Human Rights Committee on a case that had proceeded all the way to the Supreme Court in Canada. And so, of course, as human rights lawyers are, I get 6 boxes with no particular order to the documents. And, she comes to figure out what her first task is. And I said, I think you just need to read all the documents in these boxes and make a chart that tells us what's in them. And she's this long pause. She's like, I thought I was going to be drafting an affidavit. And I'm like, well, you are, but I don't know what we're going to say. So you got to read these documents in the box. And she's like, okay. So, every day after her many classes, she would come and camp out in the 39 Queen's Park boardroom and read these documents. And at the end of it, she has this chart, and it's many pages long. And then she goes, yes, someone really had to read those documents. And I was like, yeah. And I remember just thinking, wow, if somebody who has a PhD from Cambridge can learn something, that's pretty amazing. So I was really, it was a great moment, I think, both for her and for me. On the flip side, there's a lot of students who I feel taught me a lot and made me a better lawyer. I always remember that one of the first files we took on was another complaint to the UN Human Rights Committee, and this time on behalf of a non-citizen who was being deported to Somalia. And, the students were kind of, developing these legal arguments about the right to life, and one of them says, I think we can say that there's the right to enter one's own country would apply because this person has never known Somalia, even though they aren't a citizen of Canada, they've grown up here. And I was like, yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna really go for that, but sure, throw it in there as in the alternative argument. And lo and behold, the Human Rights Committee finds that the right to one's own country is not confined to citizenship. So we had these second-year law students, some who are here, who really developed international law in a really meaningful way, and mostly because they weren't set already, as us lawyers become, in this very rigid way of thinking about things. And the program allowed them the space to be, to really innovate and to think differently. Beyond the students, obviously, the IHRP has a tremendous impact on grassroots organizations, mostly by showing them how they can articulate their very real concerns as justiciable rights. And in my last couple years of being at the program, I remember that we got involved in a Supreme Court intervention in the Chevron matter. And I remember thinking that was really the true David and Goliath situation. And, this was a matter that appeared on its face purely procedural. It was about the enforcement of a foreign judgment against a subsidiary corporation. The CBA couldn't decide which side they were on. And the IHRP represented Mining Watch Canada and the Canadian Centre for International Justice to bring a human rights lens to litigation that otherwise appeared quite dry. I think it was so important and a real moment of pride when the IHRP was able to remind the court what was at stake: the pollution of lands occupied by Indigenous people in Ecuador by a multinational corporation. People who otherwise were not present in the courtroom and whose concerns weren't being articulated. Our partnership with PEN Canada, which I understand continues, was another amazing project which really saw lawyers and writers teaming up in really amazing ways. I had the chance to travel to Mexico to lobby the Mexican government, and I was traveling with then President John Ralston Saul and Adrienne Clarkson, and we had busy days, and at the end of the day we would have tequila in this garden courtyard. And the next day, I remember one of the days we had a meeting with the Minister of the Interior, and like at like 9 o'clock, I'm like, so should we start preparing for that meeting tomorrow? And they're like, that's why we brought you lawyers. And I was like, yeah. So like we all backed out, and we were up late into the night, and of course they were all like, having fun and partying. But in all honesty, it is so amazing to work with organizations who you feel wouldn't otherwise have the support to really frame their issues in such a deep and interesting way. So I just want to end with a bit of a personal reflection and really recognize how this program and being able to lead it was such a pivotal point in terms of my own career. I remember that I came to the faculty, I was an academic administrator, and one of my roles was to provide oversight over the IHRP, and at that point, Sarah Perkins and Daryl Robinson were leading the program in a very capable way. Well, Daryl went on to Queen's, and Sarah decided to move out to BC, which probably was a good decision we should have all made at some point. And it left a void, and I remember the then Dean, Mayo Moran, we're giving her an update on the program, and she said, do you have any ideas? You have a background in this area of who might lead the program. And at this point I'm 5 months pregnant, and I sort of say, yeah, maybe this person, maybe this other person, maybe Sammer. And then I sort of paused and I said, it's really too bad, the timing's so bad, I would have loved to have that job. And to her credit, Dean Moran, really embodying human rights, said, you know what, if you want the job, you should apply and we'll figure it out. So, I went through that process, 7 months pregnant, I got the job, and she filled it. The first thing she did was had to find a mat leave contract for me. I really and truly, at that point, I had done this master's in international law. I had paid like a huge amount of money for it. And I was sort of like, how am I not working in this field? And am I never going to have that career in Toronto with my family and my children and my husband, but also working in the public interest? And it really felt like that dream was going to have to die. And Mayo's faith in me really allowed me to pursue my dream. Oh my gosh, I'm crying. I guess I'm getting older. And really without her seeing that in me, I don't think I could have gone on to the work that I'm doing today. So I really have a deep gratitude, and that's why when I found out this was on my 40th birthday, I was like, yeah, maybe that's actually kind of karmic and I should go. So, the last thing I just would say is, like, in my role as Chief Commissioner, and anybody who does human rights work or social justice work, the kinds of experiences you have on a day-to-day basis, they do sometimes burn you out. You do have elements of vicarious trauma. And that's actually when I miss all of these students that I see the most. Through that difficult work, the students bring an energy and a passion that really is unparalleled. I remember working with Hannah and Paloma on the first immigration detention work and report, and we were visiting jails, we were talking to people who were faced with losing their families, and also with all this data from the government that was incomprehensible at the time. And I just remember seeing their compassion and their hearts just grow bigger. And that was like such a great moment, because if we come away feeling more compassionate about people in our society, I think then law school's done a very good job. So that's why so many of these people, I still mentor them, and people always think, oh, like that's so great that you mentor these students, it's so selfless. But actually I get so much out of it. It reminds me why I wanted to be a human rights lawyer, and so many young lawyers are often struggling to find and pursue their dreams, and it's so meaningful for me to say, just be dogged about it. It may not seem like it's going to happen, but if you keep at it, things often do work out. So thank you for letting me be part of your big tent and to be an honorary IHRPer. And thank you also for indulging me in these personal reflections. But I wanted to end by thanking Professor Rebecca Cook. The vision that she had, and really the vision, because this program is unlike any other program in any other Canadian law school, of the IHRP, her commitment to women's rights over the course of a very long career. I mean, we talk about reproductive rights now like they were always protected, and that really is because of the work of Professor Cook and Professor Dickens, and I know that their vision has really touched all of us here today. So thank you, and I'd like to end by proposing a toast to the IHRP. I need a prop. So to the IHRP for, hopefully another 30 years.
As founding director, I'm immensely proud of what the program has done and what it has grown to become. It's accomplished through its students, its alumni, and its faculty. The beginnings were very modest. Whether it was a phone call from one of you asking, oh, I've got some free time, what can I do to help? Or a phone call from another one of you who said, I just read the decision in the brief that we filed, and we really need time to reflect on it. We need to create space for the students to understand how we could have been even more persuasive. From those very modest beginnings, IHRP has gone on to create learning communities where it has addressed the persistence of human rights abuses, such as affecting our Indigenous communities within and beyond our borders, communities of leadership, such as those, and creative leadership skills, such as cross-cultural insights, communities of relevant knowledge that has been created, such as understandings of housing as a human right, and they've gone on to ensure that people have adequate shelter. As excited as I am about the 30 years of accomplishment, I am even more animated about what HRP can do to meet the challenges ahead of protecting and promoting human rights. I'm not alone in my excitement. The law school has taken significant steps that facilitate the work of IHRP. So let me now imagine what IHRP might become in the next 30 years by asking 3 questions. First, regarding learning. How we learn has evolved, and techniques of learning will look very, very different in years ahead. Given the rapidity of change, an area of concern is how we instill habits of reflection on our human rights experiences and apply them to improve our human rights practice. How do we nurture collaborative learning with our partners, for example, PEN International or Human Rights Watch, to lessen the stress of human rights practice? Experiential learning is a growing priority for this law school, and I'm hopeful that through the Exemplary Human Rights Clinic, experiential learning will become the law school's hallmark, if it isn't already. Secondly, on leadership, its nature is changing. It will look very different in years ahead. Perhaps less about individual leadership and more about shared leadership, where we learn to play more effectively to each other's strengths and weaknesses and expertises. The law school's Global Master's Law program is initiating a concentration on law and leadership to equip lawyers to direct nonprofit organizations, including human rights organizations. Given the threats to our democratic way of life from the so-called strong men in countries near and far, Canadian leadership is needed now more than ever. Our initiatives are required, for example, to persuade our government to ratify the American Convention on Human Rights in order that Canada may become a responsible citizen in this hemisphere. Canadian leadership is needed to support those countries in this hemisphere that are struggling to overcome their authoritarian heritage. Finally, on knowledge. We have to ask what kind of knowledge is needed in the future to address the causes and consequences of human rights violations. Is it more interdisciplinary knowledge necessary to answer questions about the causes of human rights violations? If so, how do we organize ourselves to create the knowledge, to teach it, and apply it? Our own remarkable Professor Audrey Macklin, who selflessly chairs the advisory board of IHRP, exemplifies the best in creating and applying the knowledge, the interdisciplinary knowledge necessary to address acute problems such as those of refugee flows. She directs the Center for Criminology and Socio-Legal Studies. I'm hopeful that through her dual positions, her research and her animating insight, IHRP might be able to nurture the trust necessary for fostering interdisciplinary insights. How do we encourage our institutions of learning to create knowledge to ensure a field of human rights remains vibrant? Faculty members here are thinking hard about in their research, teaching, and practice, for example, about critiques of human rights, how other normative systems such as religions can be applied to foster a culture of respect for human rights, and how, for example, our own Charter of Rights and Freedoms should be applied to our foreign policies. I am confident that through the leadership of Samir, he will take full advantage of IHRP's position in the law school and the wider university to ensure the vibrancy of knowledge necessary to address some of the more intractable problems of human rights abuses. As an IHRP alum and a veteran human rights practitioner, he knows how important meaningful social justice engagement is for our students. He knows how to instill in them the attributes of humility, patience, compassion, and the importance of excellence in our human rights advocacy. In bringing us together tonight, Samir has shown how we collectively can make the whole greater than the sum of the parts that each of us as individuals play in remedying human rights abuses. So let me end with a celebratory toast of gratitude and congratulations to Samir.
I think that brings us to an end. Please have some drinks, and if you have a chance, please take a look at some of the photos that we have in both rooms. Thank you very much.